Chapter 1851. Arrogant Paladins. Carl had just returned to the store with Rue, who was hiding upstairs where customers couldn't see her, when a sudden wave of power caused the frantic crowd to part. Four men in matching white tabards with golden sun emblems on the front stepped through the door, glancing disdainfully at the customers. The crowd all seemed to know who they were, though Carl had never seen anything about a clan or sect with that emblem here. The leader of the group, a supreme-ranked man with a carefully shaved and waxed head and a prodigious mustache, stopped in front of the counter. He still had that same disdainful look as he did before, and Carl already knew that there was going to be something dumb coming out of his mouth before he started speaking. That look said that he hadn't even considered doing the smart thing. Should you not be bowing before the patriarch of the Church of Light? There it was. The avatar of the world dragon bows only to the creators. Now, if you're here, you must be customers. What can I help you with? The man seemed taken aback, and two of the other men moved to flank him, going for an intimidating look. Carl sighed and activated bestial raiment so that his guild tabard would show. Friend, you don't want to go down that route. The Darklight host is not a guild that is easy to bully, Carl warned. The moment that he saw the tabard, Carl saw that the supreme-ranked man was instantly recalculating the situation. He must have heard that there was good stuff here, and thought that it was just a crafting guild under the loose protection of the New Home Merchant clan, who were currently too busy with their intake event to deal with threats to allies. The bald Supreme cut off whatever he was going to say next, and Carl noticed that he was paying attention to something others couldn't see. Likely sending or receiving guild messages. "You scent of the divine," he finally stated. "The guild has a friend visiting from the divine realms for a few days. Nothing major. Just a social call. Now, can I get something for you? What does your order specialize in? I'm afraid I am not familiar with your combat styles." Carl's response shocked the customers, and Carl faintly heard Rue laughing upstairs. Using the Black Dragon avatar, who had come to ensure that he wasn't breaking a divine command as a way to flex on others, was a particularly ballsy move. But given that it was the avatar of the Black Dragon, he likely wouldn't even be mad about it. The Black Dragon rarely complained when there was a fight. The visitors were silent for a few seconds, sorting out their new strategy, before the leader finally decided that he wouldn't be able to intimidate Carl. Everyone else in the shop was terrified and suppressed by his aura, but it didn't seem to touch Carl. The Church of Light was also aware that the Darklight host had a supreme-ranked Leakin in their ranks, though the man was crippled and wouldn't be fighting at full output. It was better not to find out why Carl was so confident. "We wish to exchange holy stones for equipment suitable to paladins and clerics." Carl smiled. "Of course. Now, I'm short of supreme-ranked items at the moment, but I have a half-dozen pieces of peerless-grade immortal gear that should suit your people. Please take a look. I will put them in the upper cabinet for ease of viewing." Nobody missed the way that Carl casually dropped the possibility of them having a supreme-ranked craftsman in the guild. Naturally, it was assumed that the Leakin pack leader was the one he was talking about, and that would be enough to shake the entire foundation of the New Home Merchant clan. Even a few items going up for auction would catapult the Darklight host to the ranks of the most influential factions in the region. The whole room silently stared at the new items that were in the display case. Only one was what was there before, as it was aimed at a cleric, with an effect that added both cleansing and purification to all healing spells cast. One would take care of poisons and toxins. One would take care of curses and dirty clothes. An all-around useful item for any healer, and Rue is already planning to make another like it for Lotus. The crazy little priestess was the core healer of the group, so it only made sense to improve her healing in ways that others wouldn't think to try. But for the visitors from the Church of Light, the collection of items that were warrior-focused, but buffed skills using the same element as the previously activated skill, were just as valuable. Not many items were effective on holy magic, as so few craftsmen could use it. But these would increase all holy damage and healing starting with the second skill of a battle. That was the only element that their people used, so the bonus would always be triggered. Not only was it shocking that Carl had something that was actually perfect for their people, he also had so many of them. They were actually items he had made earlier for the most part. They weren't considered to be among the best items that came out at Peerless. Almost everyone wanted ones that gave bigger stat buffs or targeted a signature skill for a huge boost. Those were the ones that were in high demand. especially ones that had a high-ranking skill on them that the user might not already know. Getting a top-grade items bonuses and a new skill at the same time was huge for those from a smaller clan. The four from the Church of Light nodded as they examined the dozen items on display. We will take all of them. Wonderful. Who will be paying? For these sorts of purchases, I use the system interface to ensure fair trade value, but we can retire to the sitting room if you don't wish to expose valuables in public. They had already said that they would be paying by holy stones, which weren't highly valuable to those who couldn't use holy magic. But it didn't look like anyone here would dare to rob them. Chapter 1852. Fair Payment. The Supreme took out a large bag as Carl set the items on the counter and activated the system's trade function. The bald Supreme nodded in satisfaction upon seeing that Carl would let the system determine the value of the traded goods. That was uncommon, as most guilds valued items based on how much they could actually get for them. Market rates were never the same as the system's exchange rates, and items that were relatively low use often traded for a fraction of their true value. That was the case for the holy stones. On the other hand, peerless grade gear was in high demand by basically every faction in the world, as it was incredibly rare for it to come from dungeons. At best, a dungeon might drop an epic piece every few visits. Never peerless. He set a bag full of supreme-ranked holy stones on the counter, and the other customers in the room gasped in shock. Sure, he was trading for a dozen pieces of gear at a time, but to do it in all supreme-ranked crafting materials? That was insane wealth. The system informed Carl that the value had been matched after a few immortal rank holy stones were added to the pile, and he reached out to shake the Supreme's hand. Pleasure doing business with you. I will work to restock our holy element items in case your people need more in the future. If you need a bulk order, just let us know in advance, and I will ensure that we have someone dedicated to making as much of the order as possible. The bald man nodded, and the gear vanished into his inventory as Carl transferred the holy stones to Thor's space for storage until he decided where to put them. They could use them for crafting, but they could also use them to infuse a space with holy magic, which would help growth for cleric types. We will visit again. Then, the four of them turned in unison, marched out of the shop, and vanished through a portal the moment they were outside the guild house compound. You actually took supreme-ranked holy stones in exchange? A mage in the crowd asked. Of course. We can use them for crafting, and we have clerics in the guild. Holy stones work for many different pantheons. Even our young wolf lord will get a strong bonus if I use a supreme-ranked holy stone in a power-gathering array for a power matrix building room. Clearly, most of them hadn't considered that, or known it was possible. But if you could use the holy stone to align a runic array with divinity and then have the user align it to their own patron deity, it would definitely help build the power matrix, or even rapidly increase the strength of those with cultivation-based systems. The Darklight host really was too enviable. Carl changed outfits back to a casual black shirt and pants that Ray made, cut in the fashion of the Blue Elves, with the pant legs tucked into knee-high boots and the sleeves of the shirt rolled up. Leo highly approved of this fashion, but insisted that Carl add a blood-red sash around his waist to finish the look. Ray had plenty of those. The customers were briefly confused by Carl's choice of fashion. The sailors were generally viewed as a menace to society. But with the perpetual scruff of his beard and the completely void black eyes, it actually suited him more than if he had tried to look like an upright merchant. All right, who is next? I will put the first batch of items out again if you need peerless gear. The customers crowded forward again, ready to argue for their purchase rights. However, the flood of epic-grade items that Carl placed in the side cabinets was getting more attention than the handful of peerless-grade gear. It was all fantastic gear, worthy of being called epic. But it was obvious that the crafter had made duplicates of it, as there were many similar items, with only the levels of each buff varying. That was huge for the clans. Getting everyone the same sort of buff made the recruits feel like they weren't missing out. Sure, if they were different classes, it made sense to get them very different items. But most of the clans only took in one type of people. Carl could see it in how they clustered in the room, gathering around items that were best suited to their techniques. Carl, if you would be so kind, I would like 5 of these epic-grade dark firings. They're well suited to the purgatory flames that my clan uses, one of the mages declared proudly. The comment wasn't really for Carl. He was flexing their advanced technique for the others in the room. But Carl nodded and had one of the dark elven priestesses bring out 5 matching rings for him, all with the dark flame damage bonus on them. Those golems were intriguing to Rue. She didn't know all the spells necessary to make them, so she would have to ask Carl about it later. But the idea of a supreme-ranked shopkeeper golem, especially an epic grade 1 with the stats of a supreme-ranked boss monster, was incredibly appealing to her. Having just a few of those around the guild village would be more than enough to keep nearly every arrogant sect elder in line. Carl had thought the same thing, and Rue was a mage-type class, so she should be able to learn the appropriate golem-type spells. He just hadn't had time to teach her yet. Epic grade items flew off the shelves for half an hour, as Carl and the 2 priestesses completed deals, doing their best to clear out the backlog of customers. Rue didn't want to appear in public, as she was supposed to be keeping a low profile after the disaster with her clan's downfall. But she began to work on new items for everyone while she waited. The dancing blade she made for Dana was the standard that she wanted everyone to have. Dana and Ophelia were covered, but she still needed to do the rest of the team, and then something special for Carl, if she could. The best items still relied upon him to use Breath of the World to upgrade them. But she could certainly do something interesting with the base item. Chapter 1853. Paranoid or Prudent. With Carl constantly refilling the shelves, and Rue making more of what was selling in large batches that had simple designs, the crowd began to rapidly disperse. There was only so much that they could afford, and now that they had what they came for, it was time to go back to their chosen disciples and finish the orientation rituals. Every clan had something that they did to welcome new members. Some of them made a huge deal about it when they got back to the clan. Some of them had the new member take on a mission to prove their worth before they even got back to the rest of the clan. But there was always something to make the new member feel like part of the group. In Rue's mind, it was mostly just trauma bonding. But she also had very poor luck with clans in the past, and even her own had still maintained a form of hazing ritual to weed out those who would betray the clan with little motivation. It had worked wonderfully, and many moles had been eliminated before they could ever report back to their home clans. Usually, she wouldn't leave them dead. She would simply drop them on the far side of the continent next to an active treasure location and let them fend for themselves. If they were lucky, they got a reward. If they were not, they were killed by the others who were actually looking for the treasure. Carl finished with the customers that were currently in the shop, and then waited for the ones who had surely been delaying their entrance until there was less of a lineup. Many of the elders disliked crowds, and didn't trust members of other clans in such close proximity, especially given the constant feuds. As the room cleared, 2 peak immortals came in wearing badges with what Carl immediately identified as a recall spell on them. That was a whole new level of paranoia, in his opinion. You could keep a life-saving device on you that had the effect, but keeping it out in the open to discourage people from trying to kill you? That was just a bit weird. Good evening. How can I help you today?
Carl asked.
We have come with a proposal from the Yizman clan's mining conglomerate. It has come to our attention that your guild has a particularly well-built dungeon raiding team, and we would like to arrange a deal to trade dungeon clearance attempts for raw materials. Carl frowned. Perhaps this would be better discussed in the office. Please follow me. He took a seat across from the 2 peak immortals and set the privacy spell to block all sound in and out of the room. It would be better if there were no misunderstandings about the level of privacy here. All right. So how would you propose that this deal works? Carl began. Well, our Yizman clan controls 2 low-grade dungeons. However, while the dungeons are considered low-grade, the difficulty is actually quite high, as they consist of nothing but 3 roaming bosses at peak immortal power output. While that is not great from the viewpoint of those who do dungeons looking for rewards, the dungeon area itself is actually quite large and set up as an underground mine. So, we send teams in to control the bosses while the workers dig. That is how we formed the mining conglomerate, and the mines contain a wealth of high-grade crafting materials, gems and rare ores that can't easily be synthesized with magic, even with earth manipulation. So, we would like to contract your team to do the control work, keeping the bosses away from the mining teams, in exchange for a share of the gathered resources. You are a crafting guild, so it's only natural that you would need the resources that the mines provide. But the instance is otherwise under the control of the Yizman clan, not open to the public. Carl nodded slowly as he began to understand the issue. So, you are short on members who are strong enough to keep the bosses contained, and if a second or third boss patrol's over, you are currently forced to abandon your mining efforts and waste a visit to the instance, correct? The two men looked uncomfortable, which told Carl that he was correct. I don't see an issue with that. As you said, my team is exceptionally skilled at dealing with dungeon bosses. However, we may also be able to defeat the bosses, which would put us in an awkward place, as we wouldn't need your miners anymore, only permission to use your dungeon in exchange for a portion of the collected rewards. The two immediately saw where Carl was going with this. If the Darklight host could actually kill the bosses, they were in the stronger position. They weren't just holding off as long as they could so that a mining team could work. At least, not if they could actually kill the bosses. How many people do you need for a peak immortal boss fight? The instance allows up to 25 in total, including the mining team. While it is certainly possible to clear the dungeon with a full team of ascended immortals, we are not particularly interested in that trade. Carl nodded. I was thinking of 10 for the fight, with 15 of yours to mine. And then we take a share for protection, plus any extra that we can mine after the bosses are dead. Assuming that we can defeat them entirely, that is. The two men considered that. I think that can work. By the time that you finish the fights, a large portion of the dungeon should already be cleared, but clearing the entire thing would take 2 to 3 hours with 15 people. If you're willing to have your combat team help mine after the bosses are dead, we won't begrudge you what you can get, and we will pay the combat fee out of what is collected by our team. 25% by market value. No exclusions, but no more than half of any resource with more than 4 pieces. Chapter 1854. Resource Proposal. If that is the case, just let me know when you would like to go, and I will arrange a team that can do it. What are the bosses like, and what are their special attributes so that I can thoroughly prepare? As you noted, we are a crafting guild, so we do like to have the right gear for the right situations. Of course. The first boss is a tunnel worm, 30 meters long, highly durable, with hundreds of rows of razor-sharp teeth at the mouth end. It mostly relies on earth magic attacks, but if you can avoid being swallowed, the damage output is low, and the real challenge is the durability. The second is an earth golem, again super durable and earth elemental. Lightning does nearly nothing against the elemental, though it's quite effective on the worm. The third of the bosses is a chimera. Lion body, scorpion tail with wings. It can't fly much inside the dungeon, there isn't space. But the wings can inflict a wind attack that knocks targets down, and it is wickedly fast. It's vulnerable to fire and light magic, but immune to poison. The right gear makes all the difference. We did hear that there is a chance you've got a supreme ranked crafter in your guild as well. The pack leader of the Blackwoods pack. Carl nodded. He is not highly active, as he is currently working to recover from an injury, but there is a chance we might get a few supreme ranked items before the run. Depending on when it is, of course. Well, we were thinking that 2 days from now would be perfect if it's manageable for you. That is our usual day, as the dungeon is only accessible once every 7 days, on a cooldown from your last entrance time. Carl nodded. That works for me. I will arrange members from the guild, and possibly from the new home merchant clan, depending on the numbers and composition that we have. Rest assured, we will put together the right team for you. I assume that you will be on the team? Your status is rather unique, indicating that you have an abnormally powerful physique. So despite the fact that you are not yet an ascended immortal, I believe you would do well. Carl nodded. In fact, I will be on the team. There are a few who are lower level among our members, but have exceptionally rare skills that make their versatility far beyond what most would expect. We will trust your judgment. If it doesn't work out and you cannot handle the bosses, there are no hard feelings, but the arrangement will not continue. That's fair. Nobody wants to be locked into a losing contract. The two elders of the Yizman clan smiled at Carl, who was making this much easier on them than they had anticipated. He hadn't even argued about the 25% rule, or not being allowed to grab all of a certain material that was particularly valuable to his guild. Most would have gone for the most benefits, but he was banking on the fact that his people could actually kill 3 peak immortal bosses, even when they may come at him more than one at a time. In fact, they certainly would, if the fight lasted more than a few minutes. Sometimes you could get the Chimera down fast enough to fight it alone, but the other two would never be completed solo. They were simply too durable. We will be around the clan for the next few days, so we will come see you in person. If you need us, we managed to get a room at the Central Park Inn on the 3rd floor at the New Home Merchant Clan. It feels odd to say that, given the distance, but that portal you have opened makes it wonderfully convenient to move back and forth between locations. Carl chuckled. If we had started setting up here just a few weeks earlier, we would have more accommodations available for the visitors. But we only recently moved in, and this year's intake event caught us by surprise. Anything less than a decade to get settled and properly fill out the population of a new branch is already considered quite exceptional. When we first settled our branch at Yizaman, there were 3 elders and 4 disciples. Over the course of the next decade, they only managed to gain 3 more. Then, the dungeon appeared, and they saw the opportunity to secure it before anyone else could. So, your guild branch is nothing to be ashamed of. Thank you for the assurances. We've been working hard to build up a solid base, and after taking in the Blackwoods pack, we've got a fair number of members. The only issue is that they're all just starting their training as craftsmen, so it will be some time before we're up to full capacity. I know that it looks impressive right now, but this is the result of many sleepless nights, and we're just hoping to have enough stockpiled to make it through to the end of the event. The 2 elders shook their heads. There is no chance of that. They will keep coming until you completely run out. The number of peerless grade items that they have seen this week is more than the last decade combined, which is why we decided to come to you for this proposal. You will definitely need the supplies, and we need to give our teams a break. They have other things to do, as they are all elders of the clan. But your guild branch is new enough that you don't really long-term issues to solve yet. That is true. We've got all brand new problems to solve. Those are the best ones because there is still a strong belief that one day soon we will be able to sort them all out. Carl rose and shook hands with the Yizaman clan elders, and then sighed deeply. Time for me to get back to sales. I will see you in a few days. Chapter 1855. Flex the Skill Merger. Once the shop was quiet again, Carl began making his plans for a team. There were many people in the Darklight host who could use a share of the resources that were in a mine-type dungeon. There were not many who could actually fight a trio of peak-ascended immortal bosses. Peak immortal humans were dangerous enough, but the bosses were not only physically stronger and far more durable, they also tended to have a higher maximum damage output. So, he couldn't take anyone who wasn't at least an ascended immortal, unless they had an advantage like him or Dana in that they were very difficult to damage. That was what he was counting on to get him through the event. While he was very strong for a void immortal, Carl knew that he was not legitimately on the level of a peak immortal beast or monster. However, there were some things that he could do to level that playing field. He was a beast master, or he had been. He didn't fight alone. Plus, he had the ability to synthesize new skills. If he could combine something powerful enough, he would be able to create an army that could even take on a peak immortal dungeon boss, so they wouldn't be relying entirely on the elders of the Blackwood Pack and the New Home Merchant Clan, should any of them be willing to come along. Carl took a seat behind the counter as the Dark Elven priestesses and 2 of the Lycans took care of the customers they'd have. A little work with skill merger was exactly what he needed right now. First, he would go back to attempts that had failed before and try to find the reason they wouldn't work. Army of Unholy Retribution combined Undead Army, Bodyguard, and Epic Golem to create a skill that was innately immortal ranked. That would be where he started. Spell combination successful. Army of Unholy Retribution immortal rank skill. No compatible users found. Insufficient affinity for the death element. Carl stared at the message. So that was the issue? It was creating a powerful army of the dead that he simply wasn't compatible with? If that was the case, then he simply needed to adjust the combination of skills a little. If he replaced Army of the Dead with Summon Spirit Bear Tyrant, Golem Duplication, and Reality Warp to allow him to bypass the individual nature of the summoning spells, he might. Spell combination successful. Army of Nature's Vengeance, Peerless Grade Immortal Ranked Skill. Summons an army of immortal beasts for 1 hour. Cost, 5,000 mana per beast. Carl stared at that message. 5,000 mana per beast? Golems cost 50 per casting, and he would get 2, while Dana got 4, now that they both had golem duplication. But could you even call that an army with such a high casting cost? To be fair, Carl had an absolutely immense mana pool. But even if he completely depleted it, he wouldn't have more than 50 beasts in that so-called army. It was the sort of skill that would be immensely powerful as he scaled and gained more power. However, he might do better with a less powerful summoning spell. Something that would make creatures more powerful than Illusionary Domain and Reality Warp, which could make hundreds of combatants for a paltry amount of continual mana use. That combination was already powerful, even if the illusionary constructs it created could be easily shattered by a peak immortal boss. Perhaps it was because of the Spirit Bear Tyrant spell? That one was already epic grade as an immortal summoning, and it only called one bear. If he removed that, which he had chosen to make more durable constructs, and replaced it with a damage ability, perhaps that would be better? Golem Duplication, Reality Warp, Bodyguard, Epic Golem, and Chaos Vortex should make something powerful. Spell combination successful. Army of Badgers. This is a forbidden spell, and may not be used in the immortal realms by divine decree. Understandable, really. In his mind, Kara was howling with laughter. That spell was brilliant, absolutely, horrifically broken and possibly world-ending. But brilliant. She would keep it in mind for later. Just because there was a divine prohibition keeping it from activating didn't mean that it wasn't a real skill. Go with the KISS principle. Less is more.
Kara suggested.
Right? He just needed a better summoning spell, not the very best possible one. If he just used Bodyguard, Reality Warp, Greater Golem, and Golem Duplication, he should get something that would work. Spell combination unsuccessful. Unstable skill template. Carl sighed and adjusted the balance, before deciding to give it a little kick from the Pet Sitter class. Golem Duplication, all things are pets. Greater Golem and Elemental's Wrath, to ensure that he got something with enough combat power should do it. Not as good as what he had in mind, but workable. Spell combination successful. Guard Pets, summons immortal beasts to fight on behalf of the World Dragon's avatar. Cost, 100 mana per combat pet, 200 mana per comfort pet, 1,000 mana per intelligent pet.
Usable only by the Pet Sitter class and Ancients.
I see great potential in this skill. Opal noted the moment that Carl created it. Then something horrific happened. She couldn't use it. And oh, my comfort pets. Even Carl had to laugh at the melodramatic response to finding out that she couldn't use the new skill that Carl had created. Not only that, but she couldn't use the Army of Nature's Vengeance either. She lacked the nature affinity to activate it. It was only Leo and Carl that could theoretically use that spell, and Leo only had enough mana for 2 beasts. In normal circumstances, 10,000 mana was more than he would ever need. But those needed 10,000 mana for 2 constructs that would only last an hour. In Opal's mind, the Army of Nature's Vengeance was a defective skill. Too costly for the reward. Chapter 1856. Combat skills cause commotions. Now, do I need more skills? Probably something for combat. I need something that's actually going to deal enough damage to matter without stacking up. Rampage first. Carl muttered to himself. The Lycans on duty gave him a strange look. Wasn't he terrifying enough? What exactly was he planning to pick a fight with? If it was more powerful than what he could handle, shouldn't he just ask Rue to give him a hand? Carl focused again and decided that overwhelming presence for the terror debuff and suppression, with Devastate, which dealt double damage when it did more than 10% of a target's health, would go well with Tribulation Chain and its combination of lightning and holy damage. Then he just needed to add Elemental Blade, which was already an epic grade damage skill, to give it form. Spell combination successful. Blade of Divine Wrath creates an indestructible runic weapon with the stats of a peerless grade weapon, 1 sub-rank above the caster's level. Deals tribulation damage to the target, equal to 500% of the caster's mana pool. 100 mana per minute channeling cost. Usable only by avatars of greater gods.
Carl sighed.
Again, with the insane mana cost. But he could handle 100 mana a minute. That was far less than he regenerated, and this version of the sword wasn't compatible with golems or constructs, so he couldn't make more to give away and drown himself in ongoing mana cost. What are you doing? We can all feel the mana fluctuations, but I don't sense any changes to the building or yourself, the young Leakin woman on sales duty asked. Oh, I'm using one of my skills to increase my comprehension. It's a way for me to learn new skills, instead of buying them with skill points like most classes do. That's pretty cool. Did you come up with anything? Carl nodded and activated Blade of Divine Wrath. The weapon that appeared in his hands had an oppressive aura so strong that it forced the Lycans and the handful of remaining customers to their knees, nearly forced to prostrate themselves before the divine might that was emanating from the weapon. Sorry about that, I didn't know that would happen. Carl apologized as he put the weapon away. What sort of skill is that? Some sort of holy weapon. A customer in bright white robes asked, sweat still rolling down his forehead. He was a low-ascended immortal, but the mental domination effect had hit him like a club. He could likely have fought it off in a few seconds, but in battle, that was longer than he was likely to live after seeing that weapon. A skill to create a runic weapon for avatars. It's quite a skill, but insanely mana-intensive. The immortal laughed. It had better be for the effect that it has, even without using it. I feel sorry for whoever has to face that skill in battle. It almost feels like facing an angry god. Carl was tempted to ask how he knew what that felt like, but suspected that it was not the sort of question that you could ask a stranger without it feeling insulting. Well, that should be enough for me to complete this week's tasks. Sorry for the inconvenience, everyone. Please allow me to apologize with a 10% discount on your next purchase. The immortal smiled and returned to their shopping as a group of peak immortals rushed into the room with their swords drawn. Gentlemen, relax. There is no need for weapons. What you felt was just the activation of a new spell. A bit of divine attention to an avatar of the world dragon. There is no ongoing threat. The immortals took a moment to relax before they put away their blades. That was terrifying. We thought that one of our summoners had caused a backlash. Carl frowned. How do you get a backlash with a summoning skill? It's not a skill, it's a clan technique. Sometimes it summons something that is, well, less than agreeable about being summoned. Carl nodded. I can only imagine. I've bonded with a Chaos Badger and a Blood Destruction Spider. Their reactions to being forcibly summoned without a system to restrain their behavior would be difficult to deal with. Though I got both as children, so they've grown up a bit more mellow than their peers. The immortals laughed. The word mellow can apply to a Blood Destruction Spider? Of course. She runs the Darklight Silk Emporium just down the street. She is quite into fashion, and she's got some wonderfully fashionable clothing that complements any sort of skill set. Their conversation was cut short as a bunny simply appeared in front of Carl. She was a Void Bunny, one of the group that had evolved when Kara advanced them to the Dollmaker class. She also hadn't meant to cause a scene. She had simply exited the tiny world as close to Carl as possible. He patted her head and held up a finger asking the immortal to wait a moment. What's up? If you're here, it must be urgent. The black avatar urgently requests your presence.
Carl sighed.
He likely should have known that was going to happen. He had caused the sort of commotion that an avatar of the death god could not ignore. It seems I must run. The Black Dragon's avatar does hate to be kept waiting, and I don't need to create more headaches for myself. Gentlemen, the discount applies to you as well. Please enjoy 10% off your purchase. If you wish to shop for clothing instead, I will have Lady Ray honor the discount at the Silk Emporium as well. Then Carl simply shifted back to the tiny world with the bunny wrapped under his arm. Nobody's going to say anything about an immortal ranked bunny? No? Nobody? Alright, I will. What sort of bunny is that anyhow? The dark elven priestess winked at him. It's a void bunny. She's a crafter of sorts. She makes statues and dolls. But she rarely comes out here because the bunnies are innately terrified of the Lycans, even though the Lycans mean them no harm. Void.
Bunny.
There is something strange about this place, no doubt about it. Chapter 1857. On the bright side. The Black Dragon avatar was waiting the moment that Carl returned to the tiny world, and Carl had a feeling that the dragon already knew the answers to most of the questions that he was going to ask. Most likely, just to see if Carl was going to try to lie to him. Well, now that you've caused enough commotion that half the region has noticed, what exactly was it that you were trying to do? Carl smiled. I created a new spell. Well, new to me. It's a combination of a few different abilities that I already had, using Skill Merger. The name that the system gave it was Blade of Divine Wrath. He had expected the avatar to at least have the decency to pretend to be shocked and amazed, but he did not. So, you activated the Blade of Divine Wrath inside the store, around customers? That's an interesting choice. On the bright side, you didn't accidentally smite someone who was upset at your pricing. But I must say, you really do know how to cause a commotion. That was not my intention. Besides, our prices are completely fair. If we don't offer a premium because an item is rare and in demand, we use the system valuation to determine the prices. It's all in the search for knowledge, you see. A guild that strives to do anything should be willing to purchase everything. Honestly, the Blue Dragon should be a bigger fan of us than he is. That made the Black Dragon avatar laugh, a real, honest laugh. I will give you that one. There is a lot of new information to gather whenever the World Dragon calls on a new avatar. I see that you do have a librarian here, but I strongly suspect that he is heavily overworked and even his journal is beginning to fall behind by now. Oh, good point. I have new skills that I need to find a way to donate to the library. Making skill books for peerless grade skills isn't really practical, and only me or you could actually use the skill, so I can't just teach it to him or one of the inscriptionists. You use ancient wisdom to allow the inscriptionist to copy a skill book? I suppose that's valid. Oh, that's a great idea. I've been using Follow Me, Little One, but then they have to be compatible. If I use ancient wisdom, it's much more flexible, even if it is temporary. We actually use Ancient Wisdom as a guild skill for the branch, since it's so convenient to just grant the whole group one super overpowered ability for an outing. Or give a whole bunch of assistants a crafting skill for the day. The Black Dragon sighed. Now I understand what is going wrong here. How many skills do you think that your average guild member needs? Carl shrugged. I asked the leader of our Drawd branch, and she said all of them. Is she a blue dragon? Maybe. Lotus began to giggle uncontrollably, while the Black Dragon smiled. There is no other acceptable answer to a blue dragon. They must know all the things. If I didn't know better, I would think that young Yuan was one of them. He also feels a strong urge to know all the things at the same time. Carl saw that dragon was asleep next to Lotus, who was currently making dinner on the open grill by the lake, where everyone else had chosen to sit for the evening. He fell asleep in the middle of a question, didn't he? My first thought was that being born in here, he might have been cut off from some essential types of inherited knowledge, but that doesn't seem to apply to the others. The avatar shook his head. With Naksha here, who has obtained the inheritance of a mythic rank ancient black dragon, he shouldn't be missing any sort of genetic memory. Even if he was, it would naturally fill from her presence near him. I didn't even know that was a thing that dragons could do. Quite convenient, really. Though it does make me wonder if he's forgotten that he can access it. There are so many questions. Carl chuckled, and Lotus smiled fondly at the little dragon. I don't think that he's lacking inherent memories. Everything he asks about is something that wouldn't normally happen to a dragon his age. So, he's just curious, Lotus informed them. Did you happen to make any other skills that the librarian and I should know about? The avatar asked. Well, there were a couple. There was Army of Nature's Vengeance, which is pretty good, but a lot of mana. 5,000 mana per summon, and they only last an hour. Then I made Guard Pets, which is more mana-friendly. That one I can create a proper army of summons with. Then I already told you about Blade of Divine Wrath, and there was one failure. A failure with Spell Merger? That's odd. Normally, you just need to keep trying to find the right balance until something comes up. I'm told that there are as many skills as there are possible combinations.
Carl shook his head.
No, the spell formed, but it's unusable. Army of Badgers is apparently a forbidden spell. For a very good reason. The Black Dragon agreed. Kara transformed to humanoid and came to confront him. And why is that? An army of badgers would be spectacular. What better army could there be? Badgers can do anything. The black dragon chuckled. I am told that the Order Gods petitioned to get the spell declared a war crime, but that was before my time. Kara rolled her eyes. How bad could it possibly be? It will let him summon an army of spirit bear tyrants, and they're immune to physical attacks. And how likely are they to do something that disrupts space-time or rob their enemies? Don't be silly, they can't use Chaos Vortex or Spatial Quake. Plus, they don't have thumbs. Besides, I'm just getting started on the nasty spells. Wait until I figure out how to combine Spatial Quake and Soul Harvest. Chapter 1858. Badgers cause headaches. See, this is why badgers give everyone headaches. Why would you want a spatial quake to steal people's souls? Because they're sparkly. Carl shrugged. She had a point. If you sucked an immortal spirit out into the chaos plane, where a spatial quake originated, it really was sparkly, in a collection of colors that didn't exist in reality. The black dragon clearly didn't understand, but how do you explain a color that someone can't see? There are some spells that cause side effects that are worse than the intended effect. The ones that directly affect the immortal spirit tend to be among those. When an immortal spirit is shattered, the energy that is left over is not pure, and it generally can't be used by others. Trying to use it directly is usually toxic and can corrupt the recipient. Carl frowned. Can't be used by others? The amount of immortal spirit energy that I've absorbed since I got here is considerable. I have a couple of skills for it, and a haint that helps me out with the raw energy. Even a haint normally can't deal with immortal spirit energy. There is too much personalized energy within it to filter out. How do you deal with it? Perhaps I might learn a new technique from the World Dragon's disciple. Carl laughed. You're not going to like the answer. My power matrix is based on the meridian points of a legendary chaos dragon, arranged in 5 dimensions. I just throw pure immortal spirit into it and let it chew it up, spit out the waste, and give me back the purified energy. That's a thing. Carl nodded. The personalized aspects of the immortal spirit can't take the pressure of the 4th and 5th dimensions, so they get separated from the pure immortal spirit energy, which can easily adapt. You could likely do the same thing with a purification-type power matrix. Yes, the White Dragon Avatar does that. He will use nearly any sort of energy to grow his own power, by purifying it and absorbing it. However, I was not aware that there were others who had found a technique that works the same way. Mostly, people would just trap the energy and convert it.
Carl thought about that.
I can see how that would be more effective. It takes a fair bit of mana to break down and cleanse a mortal spirit the way that I do it. But I have a lot of mana. How large is your mana pool? You're still just a void immortal, even with an epic-grade constitution. Carl shrugged. About 250,000 points? Give or take. The dragon looked impressed, but Lotus was staring at him in shock. Oh, that's some bullshit right there. How do you get 250,000 mana, and I've got 10,000? Can you even run yourself out of mana with 10,000?
Carl asked.
Of course. I can multicast long-duration heals and run out in under an hour. And that's without refreshing barriers. The black dragon chuckled. You know that you can get gear to cut down on mana use and increase mana regeneration, right? I have gear for mana regeneration and extra healing already. Maybe I should upgrade and get something with more mana cost reduction. Ask Rue to make you something that reduces spell costs by a flat amount instead of a percentage. That way, you can spam low-grade heals for virtually free. There is a 1-point minimum on all spells, but 1 point per cast area heals will never run you out. Oh, that's a brilliant idea. I don't need a lot of mana if I can get like 20 points of mana cost reduction. 20 points? How cheap are your spells? Lotus shrugged. I am a green dragon priestess. Most of my heals are long-duration ones, which are much cheaper than instant heals or my tree form, which is a channeling cost. Does mana reduction affect channeled spells? It does, but not with a full effect. It's spread over a variable duration, depending on the spell. Oh, that's not good for my healing tree spells. Well, Some of them are fine, as they're an area effect that I trigger. But the tree itself has a healing zone that takes mana to keep active, and that is most of my mana spend. Lotus looked a bit crestfallen, but Rue didn't see the issue. She could make her an item that buffed the Tree of Life spell and reduced mana cost for healing spells by quite a bit. With that broken spell of Karl's, they might even be able to get Lotus basic healing spells down to 1 point each. That would basically make attempts at reducing Lotus healing output a joke, where there was no burn their mana pools first strategy possible. That was a standard siege strategy against clans and guilds. It worked basically every time, but if you found a particularly hard target, you might need to use mana drain abilities on them. She would have to ask Karl if he had one. Rue was well aware that Karl's basic strategy was if hitting it doesn't work, hit it harder, so there was no way to tell what sort of versatility his skills had, other than in elements, so that he had something that would hit anything. Mana stealing wasn't actually something that Karl used often. The Haint had the ability, but the amount of mana that it took was far less serious of a concern than the life force and soul energy that it stole. Soul damage bypassed so many sorts of damage reduction that running them out of mana was irrelevant. Did you want my shiny new sword spell? Karl asked the Black Dragon, changing the topic back to spells, in case he could get the avatar to slip about a few more good combinations. I already know it, thanks. Divine Wrath is one of the spell categories that all the avatars learn to use by the time that they are demigods. You're what is called an overachiever, starting before you're even ascended immortal. Karl shrugged. Give me a couple more months, and I'll make to ascended immortal. I'm doing well at adapting my immortal spirit. It's just a slow process, and I haven't found a shortcut yet. The avatar laughed. You're already using the shortcut. Well, damn. I was hoping for a shorter shortcut. Chapter 1859. Picking the team. Now that I'm back here, I need to find a proper team to take to a peak immortal dungeon with me. There is a clan that wants to hire us to hold off the bosses or kill them while they mine. The dungeon is only 3 bosses, so it shouldn't be terrible, but they agreed that we can bring 10 people. Now, I understand that we can't bring anyone whose immortal spirit isn't fully formed, for safety's sake. But that still leaves us with all the elders of the pack and anyone that we want to invite from the new home clan. Does anyone have someone in mind? Rue shrugged. I'll stay here and keep up with the requests for the store while you're gone. Immortal rank items aren't a big deal for me to make, and it would likely cause troubles in the dungeon if a Supreme showed up. Good point. Why don't we ask the younger Elder Blackwoods to pick a few of his elders, and then we can drag Elder Kushal and Elder Alex along with us. They're both strong ascended immortals, and they'll likely do it for a share of the loot to give to the clan. Do you even need the extra members? With the new skills that you described and your status as a pet sitter, you should be able to do it with just your beasts and your mate, the Black Dragon reminded him. But it will look bad on us if we don't bring all 10. They'll think that we're not taking the deal seriously and might not want to enter at all. Clearly, the Avatar was more used to simply giving orders and having them be obeyed than the politics of interacting with other clans all the time. But that wasn't surprising at his power level. If you go with your beasts out, they should accept the count, but as you're all void immortals, that will cause some issues of its own. They're going to expect you to bring strong ascended immortals to deal with the bosses in any sort of dungeon. Nobody will accept or expect that you're going to simply overwhelm them with numbers. At least, that was how things were the last time I was on this world. Karl nodded. Indeed, they suffer from specialized warrior clans. The Black Dragon sighed and shook his head. Did you know that idiocy really is contagious? If you leave a smart person with idiots long enough, they will actually become morons. Karl laughed. If the dungeon difficulty was lower, I would say to bring the new home merchant clan's moron with us. But he's still not an ascended immortal. Why would you bring someone known as a moron? Because he's reliable, and he's gullible enough to go along with any sort of dumb plan that I put in front of him without asking questions. Oh, so he's a good friend of yours, the Avatar replied deadpan. Dana chuckled. Actually, not just him, but his best friend. Actually, she should be here somewhere. Yes, there she is, over with the bunnies by the water. Are you sure that one isn't known as the moron? Dana smiled and shook her head. No. She came from a mortal world where she was reincarnated and thought that the system was a game, so she gave herself a game nickname, not knowing that it would be shown to everyone for the rest of her life. Still, I can see how she would be a good friend of a pet sitter. He's got the class skill, all things are pets, and she did name herself Pretty Kitty. Opal smiled innocently at the dragon. Go pet her head. I bet that you can make a new friend too. Are there any of you that don't actively try to cause trouble? That's the brother's job. The avatar looked between Thor, Leo, and Tion, then back at the little fae. Fine, it's mostly Thor's job. But Leo is pretty responsible. While you all argued, I sent out the messages. We've got 4 elders from the pack, all on the strong side of Ascended Immortal, including a druid to pose as our healer. Plus myself and Dana, that's 6. The elders from the new home haven't answered the message yet, but they might be busy with the event. Oh, there they are. Alex, Kushal, and Douglas are all in for the run. Naturally, they want a share of the raw loot for the clan warehouse. We will make sure that they don't leave empty-handed. Now I just need to prepare a weapon for you so that you're not behind on damage, Rue decided. You're worried about his damage output? That new skill that he created will do nearly 1 million damage to a boss with average durability. It might cause a massive commotion every time it comes out, and a risk of divine backlash if you use it frivolously, but there is little to no chance that he won't be able to clear the dungeon. When you put it that way, I really should make him a proper weapon so that he doesn't keep using that skill. If anything, it'll likely be his allies that take the brunt of the backlash. The luck of the world dragons fated is too high to suffer for their own excess. Just go for something that bumps either summoned construct damage or beast damage. Either one will work. If I'm using guard pets to boost damage on top of my golems and such, they'll likely be beasts. It costs more for intelligent pets. Alright, I will work on something. You get some sleep, and then we can prep the others for the journey. Carl didn't see why it would be a major journey. He knew where the location was, and he should be able to open a portal that far. At worst, he might have to stop halfway at Gralpedron to let the hosting clan open the final portal to the dungeon. Chapter 1860. Slept in. Carl stroked Dana's ears as he woke up in the morning, causing them to flick against his nose. Time to get up. We've apparently got a big day ahead of us. The elders of the Yizman clan will be here later today, and we need to gather our teammates to ensure that everyone is familiar with the plan before we meet. It would look bad on us if nobody else knew what the dungeon strategy was supposed to be when they arrived to lead us there. They'll meet us at the store. They messaged me while we were sleeping. Speaking of which, we slept way too long. It was great sleep, but we have things to do. Carl got up and saw that it was already afternoon. They really had slept too long. It was a common issue for immortals, he knew. Mostly, they were trying to consolidate their power or make a comprehension breakthrough, but losing them for weeks, months, or years was known to happen. It felt a bit weird for it to have started to happen to him, no matter how much he enjoyed just laying in bed with Dana. Carl got dressed, then took Dana straight to the guild house, where he found all the elders waiting for them and admiring the goods for sale, while the Lycans explained the logic behind the bonuses they had chosen for the rare grade items that were the core of the store's inventory. And here they are, the man of the hour and his lovely wife. Elder Kushal joked. Sorry about that, we may have forgotten to set an alarm. But since everyone is here, both our team and the elders of the Yizman clan, we can likely get going. Did you have a portal rune to get back home? I have a skill for long-ranged portals, so I'm not as restricted by the nature of the immortal world. You think that you can portal all the way to our clan? I do have a portal rune if you can actually do it. Carl shrugged. Only one way to find out. Let's step outside, and I will try to open the portal. If not, I will take us to Gralpedron, which is roughly halfway, and is somewhere that I've been before. The 2 Yizman elders chuckled, knowing that he was referring to the elimination of the Gralpedron Templars. They all stepped out of the guild house yard, as portals were restricted too close to the house, and the elder took out the token. Do you need me to place it so you can do a portal array? Carl shook his head. No, I'm a rune master. I can just do this. The portal opened, wide enough for 2 people to walk through it side by side, and an unfamiliar house appeared on the other side. If that is your intended target, then we're on our way. It is, and I must say that I'm honestly shocked that you managed to get all the way there in one hop. Normally, we do it with 2 stopovers. 3, if we don't have a portal mage. That just sounds painful. But I'm an avatar of the World Dragon. We get bonuses to movement by portal and teleport. It's kind of our thing. The elder from Yizimon snorted as he tried to hold back his retort, but Elder Kushal laughed. Go ahead and say it, he already knows. There are many things that the followers of the World Dragon are well known for, and their ability to show up where they are not expected is only a small part of what others would consider their thing. If anything, their propensity to make bad situations worse in the most unexpected ways would be the more memorable one. Carl shrugged, and Elder Alex laughed. Oh, do we have stories for you, gentlemen? Dana waved her hand at him. You're like old aunties, gossiping all the time. Elder Alex winked at Dana. The front porch Annies have nothing on my gossip skills. I've been honing them for hundreds of years. Besides, I've known both of these men for at least 2 of those centuries. Their clan has a supply agreement with the New Home Merchant clan, which is why they were sent to you when they ran short on elders to do their mining runs. I didn't expect you to agree to do all the work. I thought that you would insist that they send at least half the team themselves. But this works well enough. They're sending the mining half of the team. We're doing the bosses. I've got it covered. We just need to make sure that nothing sneaks up on them, but I spoke with a Divine Realm avatar, and we agreed that I've got the right skill for this. The elders looked suitably impressed. But Dana knew that the Black Dragon's impression was more that Carl's skills were simply broken. Have you decided what you're going to use for constructs? Dana asked so that the elders would know that Carl had a new skill. Yeah, I looked through the options in Guard Pets for combat pets. I'm thinking that since we're in a mine, the Diamondback Rock Spider is the perfect option. They have crowd control, venom, which is good on 2 of 3 bosses, and great offensive ability. Once we get in, I can split some off to go under Ray and they can hunt. Then we will aim for another boss and keep them pulled away from the mining group. Separate and isolate. It's the best way to keep them from working together while we deal with one, then the other. Exactly how many of those golems are you intending to summon? How big is the dungeon? I was thinking that about 50 would be a good start. The Yizimon elders stared at him in growing concern. Clan leader Narissa was right. Asking Carl to come help them was probably the right answer, even if they were going to regret asking the question. They had thought that he was a bit too low-level to be truly useful, but the clan leader had assured them that he would arrange things. Now, they understood. He was going to summon an entire army once they got inside. But which of these group members was Ray? Didn't he introduce the only lady in the group as Dana?